All right, say something real quick.
I was gonna find something crazy to say, but I couldn't think of anything. It's fine.
You know what? It's for the best. That is for the best that you couldn't.
I get computer disputing.
That is for the best that you can't think of anything. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it's better. Good. So we are about to get started. Just so that everybody knows, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go through a few of my questions, and we're gonna do that for maybe about 30 minutes to an hour, and then I'll open it up and we'll start fielding some questions from the chat. I do ask that if you've already read the book, that you do not spoil other people in the chat. This interview is going to be spoiler free. I've carefully worded my questions so that I don't spoil people, and I cannot emphasize it enough. If you spoil somebody in this chat, I'm gonna ban you. Not a timeout. I'm gonna ban you. I'm gonna ban you.
We're not playing no games.
Yeah, no games. You're getting banned. All right.
Ban.
Archie.
So I'm about to end this man's whole career.
Brother, please. But we are here today with my good friend Govinda, also known around the world as Worldwide Wavy, Woo Back Wavy. My boy just put out his debut novel, Hecatomb of the Vampire. Did I say that right? Hecatomb?
Yeah, it's a Hecatomb.
Hecatomb, excuse me. Hecatomb of the Vampire. Well, first of all, welcome back. This isn't your first time on the stream. I'm not gonna sit here and act like you're a stranger. What's good, bro? How you feeling today?
Listen, I'm here with my brother, so I'm happy as usual. I'm blessed to be here. It's my first interview, so this is something I've been thinking about for a long time. Just cool stuff that was in the book and talking to people.
Since you put the book out and I started reading it, man, I had the hardest time putting it down. Them first couple of days, I burned through 100 pages in the first 2 days of that book, and I had to kind of slow down. I'm currently on page 185, so I'm a little bit under halfway because it clocks in at about 500 pages, right?
Mm.
So I'm up to chapter 14. If that scares you, it shouldn't, because the words on each page are pretty big. So it's not like you're, it's a Bible, although it is as thick as a Bible. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Okay.
This is a brick right here, man. You can hit somebody with this thing and put them out.
It is. Listen, you put that in your coat, it'll stop a bullet.
Honestly, it might.
It might, man.
So Wavy and I were talking about this, and we wanted to kind of do something new, something different. That's him in the chat right there. Matter of fact, Kev, let me shout out my guy here. I'm sure I've clipped something on your channel.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I clipped this.
What the hell? What the fuck? You ain't shit, y'all. What the hell?
Hey,
I know it was some nonsense if it came from us playing Street Fighter, man.
No, it's not Street Fighter, bro. Dev, man, I understand. Hey, get right whenever you can, bro. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sliding. All right.
Yes.
So, we decided we were going to do something a little bit different, and I'm going to play Alan Wake for the first time while we talk about the book. Since Alan Wake is a game about a writer in a very spooky place, why not talk to a writer about the very spooky place he created for us in his debut novel, Hecatomb of the Vampire? You ready to get started, Wavy?
Yes, sir. I'm locked in.
All right. Actually, my Liza P is on the way, so that's gonna be pretty soon, Archie.
Yeah, it's no lie. Where's
Yeah,
Pete?
it's no lie. That is actually gonna
We're
happen.
keeping it Pete.
That's gonna happen pretty soon. Ben, thank you for sliding, bro. Um, okay. First question, Wavy. So, why write?
That's a really good question, actually. I think it was a combination of things. I want to say the three most important things were, um, as a personal thing, I think I was growing up. I didn't like writing. Ironically, I love to read.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the patience for writing. Um, and I didn't like writing assignments. I didn't like reading into anything. I remember I would do book reports, and there would be like,
Pulling
um,
teeth.
Lord of the Flies. Yeah, like Lord of the Flies. They would ask me about symbolism and metaphors and all this stuff. And I was like, I don't care if the author wanted me to know something. They would tell me, this is stupid. They would ask me what like the conch shell represented and stuff, and I wanted to end it all. It was not fun.
So when did it change?
Um, I want to say in college it changed.
Mm-hmm.
I think I always had trouble articulating myself. So when I started to kind of, write and get into stuff in college, where I realized that writing was really freeing. Writing was something that there was no wrong answer as long as you could articulate an argument or you could explain something to somebody, yada, yada, yada. Then it felt fun because I was using creativity. So I would look at themes and all that other stuff. I took a couple classes. I took a introductive to narrative class. I
Mm-hmm.
took a drama class where they talked about character arcs and stuff. And I took it was another class, I want to say creative writing.
Mm-hmm.
And those three classes helped me appreciate literary elements and that type of stuff. But part of what I thought was cool was it was like, hey, there's no wrong answer. As long as I can, follow what's expected of me, answer the questions that are expected of me, then I can have fun with this.
Yeah.
So that's when I started to enjoy it. And that was really where I was like, oh, okay, writing is cool. And of course, my family, like my mother, excellent writer, my aunt's an excellent writer. And being around that, like my family is the most artistic family possible.
Can't agree.
And it's really, really, dude, it's like when somebody's that good at something, then you're kind of like, come on, man. Like, with everything. So then I feel like there was certain areas where I found my niche where I was like, cool, I have my own art and I'm working on that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think writing was also one of the biggest ways that it's like, okay, this is how I'm finding myself. This is my thing that I'm exploring, and it's a way of expressing myself. Yeah, Archie, school writing is not, that will not make you enjoy writing at all. At all. It's not great.
School writing is absolutely terrible. So, like, would you say then, was it for you more the expression of yourself, like the open-ended expression, or the desire to tap into being creative?
I think those two things go hand in hand. So the answer is both.
Mm-hmm.
I think on the one hand, catharsis is a real thing. I think catharsis is really, 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 truly not a concept. I think that's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, in putting emotions down on the page or even ideas, then it's like this release where it's like, wow, it's been given form, so now it doesn't have to live within anymore. But I think also, on the other hand of that is, he said expression and, what was the first part?
Expression and like the will or the need to be creative.
So I think the desire to become creative stems from expression.
Mm-hmm.
So then I want to express myself, and then in expressing myself, then I'm like, well, if I'm going to express myself, I shouldn't just, there should be more to it.
Mm-hmm.
And because I enjoy all these different kinds of art, then you pick up on things consciously, unconsciously, and then the two kind of become inextricable.
There is a point to saying that, to feeling like, as being surrounded by creative people and feeling like the one that's a bit left out. I feel that 1,000%. And having an outlet that allows you to be that creative in your own way is so important. Man, that was that was only the first question. I hope you know.
That was a good question, man. That was a really good question.
So you had our friend Ben do the artwork for this book, right?
Mm.
What was that? What was the process of working with him like? Because
that I'm sorry, continue.
No. I was just gonna say, for those that don't know, Ben is our mutual friend that is like a classically trained artist. And where does he live? Amsterdam? Somewhere in
he lives he lives in the Netherlands.
In the Netherlands, there we go. So what was that process like, working with somebody in a completely different time zone so closely?
It's funny because the distance of it never really felt. I don't feel like that was ever a factor. I almost never think about that. I have to commend Ben for A, being my friend, but B, being tolerant enough to open Twitter and find like 52 long messages describing something that I need him to draw. It must have looked like a psych ward in there. And he would read it all, and he would give me feedback. I mean, honestly, I don't think the book would be in the same form that it is now if not for Ben. And that's not like me being humble or anything. I think what happened with Ben was he's been my friend since, I want to say, 2017. Mm-hmm. So it had been a while, and I was working on the book in the meantime, and I had all this information, but I didn't write anything down. And maybe if you're a rapper, that's impressive, but if you're trying to write a novel, it's not. It's so much to remember. And I had all these events that I wanted to happen, and I knew it was going to be a trilogy pretty much from the start of when I was like, okay, this is one cohesive story. Mm-hmm. So I want to say maybe a year or two of knowing it was a trilogy. But then a lot happens in a trilogy. If you think of any trilogy, any story, even a bad trilogy, like a lot of things happen. Yeah. So I have all these ideas. I know what the characters look like. I know all this stuff. But then it's kind of difficult without writing it down, which was something I should have done a long time ago. But I was like, well, I need to write these things down for blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And then when something exists as a visual only in your head, then sometimes it can be kind of like tricky to describe. Because like if you read a book, right, a book will describe somebody and maybe it'll only describe them like one time, right? Mm-hmm. And then as the book goes along, it'll make mention of other physical attributes or whatever, but you're not getting a full description of a person every time. So then the character is existing in my head as maybe like 2 sentences or a bunch of different details over the course of what I've written. And then, well, I'm gonna ask you about that, Archie, actually. But then my issue is then I have to go back to see what I've written and make sure it's consistent and think about, oh, they are jumping you.
I was trying not to make no noise.
Hey man, listen. They are lumber. Wow.
Oh God.
My Lord. So yeah, basically it's a damn. It's they're jumping Jay Critch. They're jumping Jay Critch. Let me answer this question. I can't believe what I just seen though. So all that said, it was getting kind of hard to keep track of. So when I asked Ben, I was like, "Yo, do you think that you could maybe like draw my characters? I think having a visual of them would be really helpful because then you could just look at the person." I actually did that today where I was writing something and I just wanted to look at the person, so I went over to the art and looked. So that helped, but then also because me and Ben are friends. Ben is like he has high standards.
Yeah.
So I knew that if I told Ben something, A, he had high standards, and B, because of the nature of our relationship, he wouldn't like hesitate to tell me if something sucked.
Right.
So that's when I started giving him all this information because like for you to draw a character, you need a lot of information, and then basically you need a lot of the story also. So now I'm telling him all this stuff, telling him like all this stuff because I don't really tell anyone else because I don't want to spoil it. I know people are gonna read it, yada yada yada.
Right.
But in telling somebody something, then you start to kind of realize, okay, this doesn't work, or this could be better, or this does work, or stuff like that. So then I was bouncing ideas off of them. And in bouncing ideas off of them, then I was realizing, okay, well, here's the direction that I actually want to go with a bunch of this stuff. And at the time, the book was pretty much finished. It was 4 out of 5 parts. And I was struggling on the 5th part. Like I had a really good idea, but I was like, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. It doesn't seem that well connected. I was just going to cut it. But then it was also fatigue. Yeah, he's trying to stay calm, but they are jumping him, bro. So I was going to cut it, but part of that was laziness because, you know, when you're writing something for a certain amount of time, after a while, you want to get to the next part. Like I had decided where the next 2 books were going to go. And I was like, this really, really, I was done writing this to the point where I started writing the 2nd book, like the first 2 or 3 chapters maybe I had written, because I was like done with it. And then in talking to Ben, then I realized the direction that I wanted to go in. So then I went back and I started editing the book. And the book grew a lot. Like even the third story that you're reading now, it like doubled in size.
It's
the third story got the third story got the biggest like stimulus package. The third story got the you know. And yeah, Archie, it's like at a certain point you know what you wrote and you're just like, this is what it's gonna be. Because part of the problem is when you spend too much time on one part, you feel like you're second guessing yourself. At least for me, you feel like you're second guessing yourself. And when I sit down to write, I try and put all the raw emotion in it while I can, and then I'll come back to it and edit it with fresh eyes. So that's my idea. I'm like, I want to put the spirit of whatever's happening in while I'm writing, and then when I go back and edit, then that'll be the more intellectual and structural and everything, and piece it all together.
I mean, that's how editing works. You put that raw thought on the paper first, and then you go back with your other side of your brain, and you kind of go, Well, what was I trying to connect that to before? Because it's not really connected.
Mm-hmm.
That's no, that's
Mm-hmm.
very real.
Yeah.
Um, wow, and you know what? We're gonna come back to the separate stories that you have because I do have a question surrounding that. But we're gonna finish more of the overarching general questions. And you also answered a follow up question I had about what came first, the characters or the story. Because it's
Mm.
really funny in reading the original run on Black Panther, and with Ta-Nehisi Coates' run on Captain America, since it happened right
Mm.
after Stan Lee passed. Like he was writing Cap right when Stan Lee passed, and they were going back and putting like excerpts of stuff from Stan in the books, stuff that he had put in old issues of Marvel comic books back in the day. And in one of them, he
Mm.
described the Marvel method, which was the idea of not just the writer just writing a story and then an artist comes behind and tries to draw it all. Really, the writer and the artist basically creating the story together, where certain elements of a character's story drives the way that they look, while also at the same time, like the way the characters look or design choices for the character telling where the story goes next. And it sounds like
Right.
that's kind of what you and Ben were doing together in these character designs, where new ideas for the character infuse a whole new plot points for the story. And I can tell that a lot of that was used for Enzo in his arc in the book. And you said Enzo got the largest stimulus package, right?
There was a lot added to that story, and the funny thing is, that's exactly correct. When you talk about it's a synthesis between the writer and the artist. I knew that Ben was an amazing artist. He had already he'd done like a lot of album covers,
Mm-hmm.
all beautiful album covers, and he'd done some other stuff that I had seen like in official capacity,
Mm-hmm.
just beyond his regular drawings. And what I knew was, because I respected him so much as an artist, that I wanted him to have the room to uh, put his put himself into it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember I would tell him all the time. I'm like, there's like details in it, and there's things that I had researched, and there was things that I looked at, but I wanted him to have his own input. I didn't want to limit him, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And we would look at things together, and he would show me as things were progressing how it was looking. But I was, it was almost like running a restaurant. You know, I had ordered all the ingredients. I made sure that he had the gas and the heat and everything, and I had managed it. But I wanted to leave him in the kitchen as the chef to actually do what he needed to do. And as a result, I feel like the art was that much better because he could express himself,
Right.
and together we could come to an agreement on a lot of stuff. And because he took to it so, like he gave his all, and he did research, and Ben did all this stuff, and we would literally sit and watch movies together. We would watch movies that I had seen that I thought was important to all this other stuff, and then we would watch movies that neither of us had seen. So we had like visual references, the same frame of reference, and we would like send each other stuff back and forth. And I mean, we still do it because the second one is coming. So and there's another batch of designs and covers and everything. But we would sit there and study, and we would talk about things. Every time we would go to museums and send stuff back and forth, and we were, we're locked in. We're really locked in. We're really, but the important thing is there's no limitation on either side. I think that's the most important thing, which is what you were saying about the Marvel method.
It's
So
more
hopefully
so.
that shines too.
It definitely did. The book doesn't feel like. I mean, the book definitely feels like it's all you, right? knowing you, there's some parts of the book that I can definitely hear in your voice, from calling certain odors musty, and breath being stale. These are all things that like come through in the way that you wrote the book. But the best part about getting a pair of objective eyes and letting them have their own opinion about your work without you influencing it is that sometimes you need that fact check. Like you need that, hey man, this is whack. I don't like this at all. Without you trying to like cushion it for them. Well, I was thinking that it would. No, like you're just objective opinion on, nah, this isn't working, or this is great.
Yeah. And that's why, like, first of all, I want to just shout out and say thank you to my mother. My mother put in so much work editing this book and looking at it, and basically at every step of the book, she was putting in as much work for free as possible.
Shout out to moms.
Shout out to mom. But it's also like you can't expect your mom to tell you that something is trash and it really be trash. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's good because if my mom told me it was trash, I would probably be sad, But because I have a different relationship with Ben, he could be like, yo, this doesn't make sense. And I'd be like, you know what? It doesn't make sense the way that I'm expressing it. You know what I mean? So now I got to do X, Y, and Z. So it does make sense to people who are not me. Because that's the thing. As the writer, you have all the information in your mind. It's getting the reader to interact with it in a certain way. And you want the reader to interact with it, but you also want the reader to have room to interact with it the way that they want. So it's a very interesting thing.
Awesome. I think you thoroughly answered that question. I'm not gonna lie to you.
I'll be answering too much.
But no. Because what you're answering enough so that I don't have to ask my follow-up questions for each one of my questions. You're just naturally answering them. So if I were to give you feedback as an interviewee, I mean, you're doing a great job. If I wasn't so prepared, I'd be concerned right now.
See, that means you're a good interviewer.
Well, thank you. But again, shout out to mom. Shout out to Ben. I put his Twitter in the chat. I think that's his @ but he's an artist. He's a extremely gifted artist. I retweet his work all the time. And he's an inspiration to our circle of friends, just because. And when I said he's classically trained, I mean the man is a wizard,
Yep.
on with some ink and some paper, man. It's outstanding. Wavy, there is a lot of genres that I believe you're capable of writing. Why did you choose a vampire novel?
Okay, this is a funny answer, and it sounds a little cynical, but here we go. The first thing is I had a weird lucid dream, and basically the way that where I was at my parents' house, the way it's set up is we live in an apartment. There's a hallway, and on the left side of the hallway there's the bathroom, and then on the right side of the hallway there's our room, and then at the end of the hallway is my parents' room. So it's kind of like jigsawed the way it is, because nothing's like arranged directly across from itself. So in my room, you can see the bathroom, but it's a diagonal view of the bathroom. And then the door for my room and the door for my parents' room is separated by a little bit of a wall.
Right.
But basically they're right next to each other. They form that right angle.
Right.
So one night, my dad is in the bathroom, I guess, and I guess that woke me up. I had kind of been having a weird dream anyway, but I think the sound was what woke me up. And he's, my dad is He's an older black man, so he got the sleep undershirt, and it's like my dad is tall too, so my dad is like 6'1", scraping 6'2". So he kind of like lumbers out the bathroom half asleep and goes into his room and closes the door. But I guess I was in that mental state where it was a little bit like my mind was racing and it was kind of creating things. So it looked like a white face at first. And then about a second later, then it had turned into, oh yeah, that's his dad in his shirt.
Yeah.
So I went back to bed, and then the next morning I woke up and I had an idea. I was like, okay, there's a white face, and I was thinking about the hall in our apartment, and I ended up writing a one-page story just because.
Yeah.
And I remember I had read an article about self-publishing. And I don't know why I read this article. I read all kinds of stuff on the internet when I'm bored. I just read things.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow I arrived at that article. So it was like, if you want to self-publish, here's some of the things you should think about. And I had absolutely no intentions or ideas about self-publishing anything. But I read the article, and it was like, oh, it has to be in the title. You should put things that somebody will just randomly search. It made people seem really dumb. It was like people just go to the search bar and type in. That's a fact, Archie. It really is a fact. People just go to a search bar and like fat finger a phrase in that they're interested in or a word, and that's how they find things. Mm-hmm. So because of my dad, which is, I guess this is the second time his inspiration is coming up. Mm-hmm. My dad is like really into 80s and 90s horror and action movies. So when I was young, I must have been like 10 when we started watching these movies together. Mm-hmm. We were watching everything, like Predator, Alien, the whole series, The Thing, like stuff like Lethal Weapon and Die Hard and all these movies. We would watch them together. Mm-hmm. And we would have them. They were like all stars recordings on VHS. But yeah, he and he was the one who put me on the comics. He put me on to like pretty much everything. So my dad was like a catalyst for a lot of this stuff. So he's having me watch all this stuff, and I gained an affinity for all these things, horror and action, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when I came to writing it, I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll do something in the horror genre, because again, I had no real intentions of doing anything, but I was like, when I think about horror books that I read like Stephen King, and at the time, I don't think I had read much Clive Barker, but as the time went on, I was reading him. And I was like, I can be really lazy and just put out short story comps if I really want to write, because then I don't have to like commit to a series. J.K. Rowling, for example, she wrote 7 books to finish the story. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yo, I'm not writing 7 books. That's crazy. Mm-hmm. I'm barely writing 1 book or writing this or writing that. I don't want to go through putting myself in a series and like not finish or do this or do that. People are harassing you. They're like, where's the next book?
Yeah.
I wasn't going to do that to myself. And it was a long time ago, so I was a lot younger. And again, the patience wasn't there. So I was like, I could just do short story comps and that'd be it. So the vampire thing was supposed to be one story. And I think vampires are cool. I think there's certain facets I like about vampires, certain facets that I'm like, this is whack. I don't know why they started doing this, blah, 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 blah. And, when you think something is whack, then it's up to you to fix it. If you really think it's whack, you just make your own thing. Instead of complaining about it, just do your own thing. So I think that's where I settled on vampire. I think the pale face was the impetus, and then knowing that people would probably just type vampire in the search engine, and me liking vampires was another thing. I had just read Salem's Lot, like, I want to say the same year, and I loved that book. So, you know.
I'm not going to lie to you. A part of me was really praying that you were going to say Fright Night when you were listing out those movies from the 80s.
Fright Night is fire.
It's so fire.
That's a fire.
Boy. Fright Night, I mean, I like both of them, to be honest. But of course, like, the OG is like, that's the one.
That's the classic.
That is truly the one.
That's the classic. If I want to talk about, like, background with vampires, Salem's Lot is definitely there. My mom was a big Buffy the Vampire Slayer head.
Yeah.
And my mom is, like, also somebody that I used to just sit there. My mom would be watching something, and I'd walk in the room, and I'd be like, what's this? And she'd say whatever. And she would... My mom is like, I don't know if she did this on purpose, but she's kind of a genius because she knew exactly how to get me interested in something. She never... Yeah, shout out my moms. I'm telling you.
Shout out to moms again.
She would never be like, oh, you should watch this. Because when somebody I just had that kind of personality sometimes. Sometimes when people, like, suggest things to me, I'm like, man, I don't want to watch this. How you know I'm going to like it? So my mom wouldn't do that. She would just be like, oh, this is this. And she'd continue watching. So then I'm like, well, I'm going to sit down. I'll sit down. And then before you know it, we're having fun. So, like, we would watch all kinds of shows. We watch Psych. We watch Supernatural. It's like, I'm telling you, she was the one. She was on it. She knew. Psych, Supernatural, all these different shows. And Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Charmed were shows that, like, I didn't really watch, but I kind of, like, just sat with my mom and, like, watched a couple of episodes here and there or whatever. So I feel like that's a formative thing. Let me think. Vampires. She had me watch. Charmed was fire. Buffy and Charmed are both fire. There's nothing else you could say. It's gas.
It is gas. That's true. Well, I think you kind of touched on this a little bit in your answer to my last question. But I mean, maybe you have an answer for this specifically. What made you choose a non-linear plot for your story?
Okay, so that was a two-pronged thing. I think the non-linear thing happened because at the time I was getting into a lot of different types of film, and then watching film, and it's not going to be anything super like pretentious, for lack of a better word. I was in a film class also around that time. We watched, like, Memento. I watched Tarantino films and stuff, and that combined with the fact that I read 2 Anne Rice novels, which also speaks to the vampire thing. I read, I want to say it was the problem is there's 3 of them, and I can never remember the exact order. So there's the Vampire Lestat, there's Interview with the Vampire, and there's Queen of the Damned. I think Interview with the Vampire is the first one, and then Vampire Lestat is 2, and then Queen of the Damned was 3. So my mom somehow got, like, these books from a library, or maybe my grandma got it and gave it to my mom, and she was like, you should read these books. And that's one thing I never had, that, like, weird, I don't want to do this thing. When my mom gave me books, I read them, no matter what they were. I read stuff that I knew I was probably not going to like that much.
Yeah.
Because she gave them to me.
Yeah.
So I read these 2 books, and the thing is, they're the second and the third of a trilogy. And she knew that. She was like, Interview with the Vampire is boring, so just read the next 2. And I was like, I guess I'm going to miss out on some of the story, but... And there's a lot going on in those books. It's not exactly just, hunky dory. There's a lot of plot lines, a lot of characters.
Right.
But I think between 1 and 2, it's not such a big connection. I think it's just certain characters, because it's two different characters given their points of view and stuff. So, long story short, when you get to Queen of the Damned, it's like all-star book where all the characters are kind of getting their plot lines resolved.
Yeah.
Pardon me. And they're all making appearances, and like everything's kind of coming to fruition.
Yeah.
So I read that book, and the way that Anne Rice structured it was insane to me. Like, it was really, 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 really good, because she looked at different people's perspectives, and she brought everything together, and how everyone got together. And I was like, this is really impressive as a work. And then, like, Pulp Fiction, I thought that was really cool how, it was multiple different stories. And Memento was one story, but it was kind of like told in all these different points in time during the story. So I was like, oh, this is really cool. And eventually what was originally a short story compilation was, I had the idea to make it an actual one story where it's synthesized, and it kind of, because I wanted to replicate that feeling where it was like, oh wow, that's how this connects to this, and this is all related, and yada yada yada. So then there was a little stitching that I had to do, but because it was early, it wasn't that hard. I think I had only gotten to maybe the first 1 or 2 stories when I decided that it was gonna be connected.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, so you started with Queen of the Damned, and then what was the third one again?
No, I started with the Vampire Lestat, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, and then Queen of the Damned is the one where everybody.
The Vampire Lestat. Yeah.
Everybody's story, and you know what? That makes sense for what you told me you have planned for the next book, which we can get into a little bit later. With how you want it to feel like a highlight tape, and getting to that.
Yeah.
So would you say that trilogy kind of mapped out the way that you planned out your own trilogy?
In a way, I feel like it might have done that a little unconsciously. I still haven't read that first book. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe I should, because I really like the other two. They're really good books. She's a great writer, dude. And I should probably go and write that. And if I ever saw Anne Rice, I would probably apologize to her for skipping that first book. But I think perhaps unconsciously it definitely influenced the structure of this first book.
Yeah. And
then I mean I can talk about the next two as far as structure if you want, or I can just wait for that question to come up. But
I mean, go ahead. Go ahead.
The second one I feel like is so good. I'm so excited to put it out. I had so much fun working on it. And the second one is kind of, I think the first one introduces you to all the characters. It sets everything up. And, I think I really, my goal was to hook everybody in. But I think the second one is what's really, really, really gonna make people invest in the characters and the story and want to stick with it until I just run out of ideas and I'm finished writing. Because there's gonna be more after these first three, but the first three is the core of the mythos and everything. And the second one is where some of the best character development comes in, character interactions, and really strong character work, strong themes, a lot of symbolism and stuff like that. That's what I really wanted to breathe into the second one. And the second one is a little less structure based and more really, really, really focusing on characters and narrative. So that's That's awesome. That makes me feel really good. And then the third one is where things resolve, and it's really, really like a highlight tape. Things are happening and pay off on as much as you can imagine, and then what comes afterwards. So the second one is really the one. It's funny because when you look at a lot of second films or books in a trilogy, the second one is, at least for me, the second one is my favorite a lot. It's like the Twin Towers. It's my favorite.
I was thinking the Twin Towers.
See, this is why, man. This is why.
Yeah, the Twin Towers is such a great movie. But then
The Twin Towers is perfect.
I was thinking about the Clone Wars, or not the Clone Wars. What's that? Attack of the Clones. Which now, like
Attack
as
of the Clones.
adults, it's not the best. We know it's not the best in the trilogy. But when I was a kid, you couldn't tell me Attack of the Clones wasn't the best one because of the scene with Yoda at the end of the movie.
Yoda versus Dooku.
Yes.
Oh
yes.
my goodness.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
But if you're thinking the original trilogy of Star Wars, then for me, it's The Empire Strikes Back is the best one.
Oh, it's two. I've been saying Twin Towers. See, I'm from New York. Man. I'm from New York. Dipset all day. 5%. I can't. It's funny because I make that mistake a lot. I always call it Twin Towers.
I make that mistake all the time.
I make that mistake constantly. But even, I'll give you another example, a recent example. And the third movie's not even out. But if you look at Across the Spider-Verse and you look at how they build the characters.
Yeah.
Across, they really did it.
And that's coming to Netflix at the end of the month.
I will be present.
I will be there.
On numerous occasions.
All right.
That movie made me like a lot of the characters. I already like Miles, but it really, really solidified it. But that movie made me interested in Gwen. And I feel like there's characters that become more major in the second one, and it's a similar thing where you'll really be interested, you'll really be invested, you really enjoy them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
We both are huge Spider-Man fans here, and if we're going to veer off on this topic real quick, I've never ever cared about Spider-Gwen. Never. It was OG Gwen Stacy for me. She died, my heart broke. Okay, let her go. Right. But and this is speaking about to that what you were saying about character development. Gwen got the most character development in that movie than anybody else in the movie. Like she
got the stimulus package.
She got the stimulus package. She truly got fleshed out in ways that like I'm not sure if the OG Gwen Stacy got fleshed out that much. When I really think about it. Like they paid some attention to her. Oh, I guess I wasn't supposed to try to jump there. Biden bucket her direct deposit is hilarious. My next question completely sucks. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's a bad question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway because it ties into the one that comes right after it. In your book, you use a lot of descriptive language, and like in the horror parts would like to evoke a feeling for sure. But even in the most what should be monotonous parts of your book, you use a lot of descriptive language. Why would you say you do that?
Rap music has ruined my brain. In the best way possible. Remember when I said I really hated Chen, you the best. I really hated like the idea of metaphors and similes and all this other stuff in school. In school, it was just not relevant and it, like to me in my life. And I was really cynical and I thought I was like smarter than everything else. So I was just kind of like, I don't care. You know, it was just like not interesting to me. And really being into hip hop music made it make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So then, like, I would be in creative writing classes and they would be saying stuff, and I was like, Oh yeah, that makes sense. But I had heard it in a song where
Mm-hmm.
people were using, they were doing like personification, and they were doing similes and metaphors and analogies and all this other, all kinds of different things that have words for them that were things, right? Um, literary devices.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, then it was kind of like, oh, this is really cool, and it's a way of getting somebody to an idea in a shorthand way almost sometimes. So I thought it was really interesting because I'm super into brevity. If it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't need to be there, especially in writing, even
Mm-hmm.
if it sounds a little contradictory because I'm talking so much, but in real life, like I feel like I say what I feel is necessary, and I think packing something into a little box that somebody can get, and it lets their imagination run wild with it, or it lets them come to a conclusion. I think that's so cool. And with descriptive language, it's kind of like at some point I'm gonna have to get down to something that's nonsense, right? I'm gonna, have to describe a room or something, and it's gonna be important. It's gonna be essential for the story. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same token, if I'm gonna do it, I should do it right. I should do it in a way that people can. It puts a picture in your mind, and that's the job of a good writer. A good writer, it's you got to do that. Otherwise, there's no point. You know.
I agree. No, that makes complete sense. Then I mean, in this same breath, and I say it because it leads into my next question. So far in the book, my favorite chapter is "The Sky Was Red." I think that this chapter encapsulates some of not only your best writing in the book, but some of the best writing and descriptive language I've I think I've ever read in general. I want to read a specific portion of the book that really kind of got me. Uh, it scared me. I was sitting outside of my. I was sitting outside of a shop trying to get my car worked on, and I was reading the book. And oh my gosh! Wait a minute.
Ooh,
All right,
wait,
yep, we got the stream back.
wait.
All right, we're good.
Okay, we're back. We're
We're
back.
back. Okay, hold on. Let me see. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Here it is. So I'm just gonna read a quick portion of this book, from "The Sky Was Red," and I'll just let y'all decide how y'all feel about it. The earth shook fiercely and opened up, enormous fissures yawning at her. She looked around and saw green, mossy hands pulling her into the soft earth, their dirty fingernails caked with blood and soil, crushing her body as they pulled her down into the bowels of whatever hell she'd entered. Through the ground, she saw tongues, mouths, and eyes, not arranged into faces, but fused together by roots and mud on misshapen heads. Eyes that were milky with cataracts, but that moved restlessly as if they were dreaming. Sharp teeth sliced the very tongues that inhabited their mouths, and the actual mouths sprayed blood, bile, and spit as they opened and screamed. It was a scream of pain coming out in unison from hundreds of malformed beings, tongues lolling about, inviting Maury to join them. That primal, horrifying noise was their version of begging. Son, I read that part and my brain started cooking because I could see it
Yeah.
so clearly. Like that part bugged me out so bad because I just saw walls of mouths and tongues and blood and throw up and all, like, I it was crazy. And while I was reading that, it really reminded me of like certain eras of Berserk. And so I gotta
Oh
ask,
yeah,
you get what I'm saying? Like, especially during the,
yeah,
the scene of the eclipse,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So then I have to
yeah.
ask, what type of inspirations? Who were your inspirations that you drew from while you were writing this book or before you wrote the book? If you can even say that you consciously were inspired by somebody while you were writing it.
Okay, so I want to say the three biggest inspirations, and these are generally the inspirations that I tell people when they ask, were Berserk, Hellboy, and Queen of the Damned. And we talked about Queen of the Damned already. Queen of the Damned was more of a structure thing. That, and she really created characters that were very interesting to read about. So there was a bunch of characters in there, but it never felt like a lot because they were all characters that were at least moderately interesting.
Right.
Berserk is like, Berserk was probably the biggest influence. I remember I started reading Berserk, I want to say it was 2013 or maybe 2012. So that was like, I think 2013, I'm dating myself crazy. But 2013, I started college early, but that was my first year in college. That was my freshman year. So I sound crazy old right now. But I just remember reading it, and as far as manga, I was really only reading shonen manga. I had a couple of friends that were into manga, but I wasn't like in a big web of it. So like I everything that I was reading was stuff either I had found on my own or somebody else that I like knew in person that I would see would recommend, and at a certain point I would stop doing that thing where I'm like, man, I don't need you to recommend me nothing, blah 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 blah. And then I would actually read it. So I don't exactly remember how I got to be reading Berserk, but it's just like the tone of it and the way that Guts was and the illustrations were something that I had never. I'm not that old. Yeah, he is older than I am.
We talking about you right now, Bubba. Don't bring this to me. We are talking about you being a boomer.
To the community, Black Dynamite. Listen, man. That civil rights afro was a long time ago. But yeah, so Berserk was crazy. Berserk, it especially being a visual thing, and it was really bleak. And I used to, Berserk was obviously on hiatus when I started reading it because it was on hiatus forever. And I used to read it on, I think it was manga. It was readmanga.com. Which is a throwback.
You are dating yourself. I want you to know.
I am dating myself. We didn't have all these cool apps or whatever. You had to go on readmanga.com. Yeah, I sound crazy. You had to go on readmanga.com and pray that they didn't just photocopy the... I did yell, I have a dream, and I almost made that joke too. That's crazy. You had to hope that they didn't photocopy the scans so there's not a big crease in the middle of your spreads. Like, it was a whole thing. Real ones? No, I'm telling you.
That's better than
I was reading.
That's better than what we had to do when I first started reading manga. When we were like looking at photo scan stuff on YouTube. You had to pause it.
That's insane.
Make it a full screen so you can read it, and then pause it when it went to the next page.
That's absurd. That's ridiculous. See, I'm not that old. He was reading manga on the papyrus scrolls in ancient Egypt.
It was foretold. Hey, but you know what? When you're talking about Hellboy, are you talking about this Mike Mignola Hellboy? I had to go and grab it.
Okay, so let me go get that.
I got it, bro. It's there on the screen.
Sir.
You ain't caught up yet.
So let me finish real quick.
Yeah.
So with Berserk, it was kind of crazy, and I wasn't really so aware of dark fantasy. But Berserk is one of the pillars of dark fantasy and stuff like that, if you ask me. So, like, when I was looking at it, I was reading about it also. I wasn't just reading it, I was reading about it. That's part of the reason why I brought up Read Manga. Read Manga used to upload, like, the entire volume as the chapter. So the volume would be, like, anywhere from, like, 60 to 100 pages or whatever. And I used to sit there and listen to Live Love ASAP and read read Berserk, and it would be like the dead of night. And there was something about Berserk and just like stuff from religion that, like, when they talked about death and stuff, I was kind of like, oh, this is a little bit similar to, because I'm a Hare Krishna, so it reminded me of religion a little bit. All that said, the other thing was when I looked up stuff about it, they were like, oh, Guts is a Byronic hero. So I was like, what does that mean? What's a Byronic hero? So then I started looking into that, and I was looking at, like, Lord Byron, and I was kind of attracted to that kind of hero, where it's a hero with, a lot of baggage and weight on his shoulders, and they don't always seem like the nice person or whatever, but they're still doing the nice thing. So, like, I'm a big Wolverine fan. I don't think Wolverine really falls into that category exactly, but he's, like, on the cusp. You always know Wolverine is kind of a cool dude, but he has the morality of him is what's in the balance. That's something that he's thinking about a lot. So, like, I was thinking about characters that carry a lot. That it's not just Spider-Man, where Spider-Man is my favorite superhero. Spider-Man is, at the end of the day, no matter how much everything sucks, Spider-Man is going to find a way to kind of be cool. There's heroes out there that it's like, no matter what I do, I'm, like, persevering. And that's what I thought was really cool about Guts. He was thugging it out.
Guts is the ultimate thug it out protagonist.
He is the ultimate thug it out protagonist. He is not, his story was not getting better the entire time I was reading the manga. I was like, this is very interesting. And then, so Hellboy, my first exposure to Hellboy was probably the original movie with Ron Perlman. I want to say that came out in 2005 or 6, something like that. Give or take a couple years. And then I remember I got the first 3 volumes, trade paperback. I got that for, like, one of my birthdays or something, or I just bought it. So what I thought was really cool about Hellboy was the historical fiction. I thought it was really interesting that they were, like, looking into real events and then kind of spinning that out into a fictional state with how the Nazis had summoned him, and then they were trying to create all this stuff and yada, yada, yada. I thought that was really cool that you could look at historical events, things that really happened, and then make an interesting story out of it. So I feel like that really made a mark on me. Oh, and see, Archie's saying that, forgive me, correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying that the sort of perseverance and melancholy is what attracted you to Liz from Hellboy, which is a very good point, because it's funny, she's the only one that looks, or the main cast of Hellboy in general. Yeah, because I was going to say, they're all suffering in their own way, and you could argue that Liz is suffering the most, and she's the human one. The rest of them are literal monsters, and they're having an easier time than Liz is. But yeah, I thought Hellboy was so cool. I thought everything about Hellboy was cool. I thought the mythos, I thought the fact that they were on BRPD, I thought the historical fiction was the biggest thing that left a mark on me, because then I started looking at other, like, historical fictions and stuff. It was something that I was aware of, but it wasn't something that I was seeking out, or I guess I decided that I liked. So yeah, those three are the most influential, I would say. When I wrote that chapter,
Yeah.
I remember finishing it and I didn't want to like go back and read it. I knew it was like something in me was like, this is crazy. But in another part of me was like, this is kind of creepy. Like I wrote it at night and I was like, yo, I'm not reading this right now. I wrote it and then I closed the laptop. I put it away.
You got it off your chest, and you like. Honestly, I get it, bro. Like the way it crawled. I felt that chapter like crawling up the back of my neck. I mean, that's what was really what was really insane for me in reading it, and that's when I knew I was like, man, this book is special. Like, this book is special. Okay. Next question. I like to compliment the way that you transition from backstory to present day in your novel. They seamlessly give us info on characters without having aimless exposition dialogue thrown around. Was this on purpose?
So you're saying from
when you
say again?
The way that you like flash back, like there's times where I don't even notice that I'm currently in a flashback because it just happened so seamlessly, right? And you did that rather than having like the characters, say, well, back when I was a child, somebody did a backflip off of my back porch and landed on my dad, and that's why I hate back porches. Like, it's more of like they see something which triggers something for them, and then you just write their backstory rather than like try to what a lot of writers think is clever by having them just outright come out and just talk about it, or they just give up and just have them outright just come out and talk about it.
Yeah, the info dumps.
Was that your way of doing info dumps without making them feel like info dumps?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that's a two-pronged thing. So first, my mom was. Here we go back to my mom. Okay, so here's a little backstory. I was actually homeschooled until I was 17. So my mom was my teacher, and she would have us write things, and she actually did encourage us to write fiction. I'm not gonna say we wrote fiction a lot, but we did make stuff up, and that was part of the assignments, and it's part of the curriculum, X, Y, and Z. But what she used to push a lot of like literary devices. So she would be like, you gotta show and not tell. So to answer your question, yes, info dumps are telling. You shouldn't tell, you should show. Because if you're showing properly, then you don't need to tell anything. The person should be there when it happens. And with the flashbacks, I think it's interesting that you asked me this because I know for a fact that it happens in the third story. I mean, the third story, yeah, it happens. And part of it is I want the reader to be in the experience. So if somebody's remembering something, then it should be like you're in that person's brain and you're experiencing it with them. It shouldn't be that they're narrating something. It should be that you're really experiencing what their experience is, and that makes it that much better. If I'm telling you, I went down to the liquor store and I bought some liquor, that's different from like you actually being there, like a ghost on my shoulder and smelling what I smelled and seeing what I saw and X, Y, and Z. And in addition to that, then I can frame it from their perspective. So there's information that they may or may not have that go into their interpretation of the experience that they had. And that's useful because sometimes I'm not giving you all the information, or sometimes this person thinks something happened, but it really didn't. And these are the things they are jumping your ass.
They are trying to. They really are
trying to get you.
They are.
I remember this part.
Honestly,
this part is hard.
This part is not easy. They are definitely trying to kill me with everything they got.
It's not even the worst part of it. But yeah, so that's the one thing: showing and not telling, allowing the reader to have certain details and a certain perspective, certain point of view of something, because something could be really scary to you or really annoying or something, and to me, it might just be like, yeah, that happened, and that didn't make an impression. Um, so that's part of the flashbacks. The other part of it is it's a third person book, and I didn't want to switch from third to first because I feel like that would be really confusing. And because it was my first novel, I felt like first person was actually, I don't know why, but first person was way more confusing to me to write than third. And because of the books that I was reading, Salem's Lot, Queen of the Damned, etc., 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 they had a lot of different character perspectives. I remember I read Percy Jackson, but I feel like Percy Jackson was before that. But that's another book where there's a lot of characters with different perspectives that you're following. Mm-hmm. I actually can't remember if Percy Jackson's first or third person. I want to say it's third person. Mm-hmm. But because I knew that there was going to be different perspectives, then I wanted to keep it third person for the majority and not confuse people. So part of it was structural and mechanical thing, and part of it was style and for the quality.
Well, then that makes a lot of sense, and that it kind of segues into the next question. You have this collection of characters. Why did you decide to start the story with what feels like the wimpiest one so far in Cameron?
That's a good question. I think, I don't know why, but there was a couple characters that I just wanted to be kind of pathetic. It's a little sick because you're creating this character and then you're like, yo, this guy's annoying.
Yeah.
Or this guy is this, or this guy is that. And I think, all in all, the funny thing about that first story is at its core, it is kind of a love story. And where I was at in my life at the time, I was like learning to navigate being in a relationship and all this other stuff. So I would take things and I would pull them from my life and make them really extreme and then throw them at the wall of the book. So I don't think I wasn't like a wimpy person.
Yeah.
But I was kind of like, certain things that I was feeling, it was hard to grapple with. You know what I mean? Like when you're first in a serious relationship and you have feelings for somebody, you are vulnerable with somebody, Death by Temptation. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm going to watch it. But I'm also probably going to be like, I hope he gets beat up or something. I have trouble with these types of characters because I don't like pathetic characters.
Yeah.
So then, like, I feel like I did it on purpose just so it was almost like all the parts that of vulnerability and dealing with somebody else and both of you finding your way, and like if you feel like something's unfair, somebody else feels like something unfair, all this stuff kind of coalesced into this caricature. And then the caricature came out in different places. And that's not to say Cameron's me. He is far from me. And it's not really to say that he's anyone in my life.
Yeah.
The vast majority, when you create a character, they just kind of come out as this Frankenstein of conscious and unconscious people in your life and characters and all this stuff that you've interacted with. And it just kind of bubbles up from the surface and you pick out pieces and you build whatever it is. So it's like panning for gold. Yeah, you really have no concept of where it's coming from. You're just kind of like, okay, this is where I think the story needs to go. So I think in that sense, I created in that way because he needed to be in a state of turmoil. And I think he needed to be a character that you felt a little sorry for.
Yeah, and you do.
Yeah.
You do feel a little bit sorry for him, and then also at other times, oh my gosh, you just want to get him out of there. Like, goodness gracious,
Mm-hmm.
Cam, get it together. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so funny that you say that because there's echoes of Alan's story with his wife in Cam's story with his wife from the very beginning of the book where they are in their relationship. You get what I mean? Without me
Yeah.
digging into it at all, just in playing this, I'm reminded. Because right here, the end of episode 1 of Alan Wake is all I know of the game. I was able to play through that without really having to pay much attention at all because I've already seen all this before.
Right.
That's a good comment, Church. Always a balance writing characters who are weak without making it pathetic and grating on the audience like Deku.
I hate Deku so much. I hate that character. I hate him.
Okay, on to the next question then. And this ties back into what you were saying about Hellboy and historical fiction. I mean, you did your homework on these different regions of horror from Japan to Italy and even to Africa. And this much came clear, when I was reading Mori's story and Enzo's. So, like, what kind of describe the research process that you went through looking these things up and incorporating them into your story?
This is a really cool question, actually. I'm glad you asked. The third story is where I had to do the most research, because that was something that I didn't that I didn't know
Yeah.
until I started writing the book.
Yeah.
So there's stuff that happened in that time period. I'm dancing around it a little bit because it's not really a spoiler, but it's also like
I think it's okay to say that there's stuff that a lot of it takes place during World War II, and we can just talk about the setting of it without talking about what actually happens.
Yeah. So around the time period of World War II is where the vast majority of the third part is set. And I actually did a lot of research into the the certain events because it's not like necessarily the most well-known event that happened in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
The character is Italian, so I had to look out like what Italy was doing, and I already had an idea for something coming out of Africa, but I had to look up the actual relationship of things happening in Africa that were perpetrated by the Italians. So I literally was looking up, and then I kind of arrived at East Africa because I had a couple of ideas, like one relating to Egypt and then another relating to Ethiopia because my wife is from Ethiopia, so it just was like a natural thing. I was learning a lot about Ethiopia. So that was actually really interesting to look up events that were happening and then decide, okay, if this was going to be a story, how would this fit in? Mm-hmm. A lot of that came in the, I'm going to call it a rewrite. It wasn't really a rewrite, but it was in this editing process. After I spoke to Ben, that's when I added a lot of those details. And with Mori's story, her story was the second one. So her story was the first one that was totally fresh, right? The first story was based off the page that I had written. And I'd thrown it on a blog, and then my mom had read it. She was like, this is really good. You should continue to write. So that page became the end of the story.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
So then,
of Mori's story?
Yes.
Ah,
the first
that's
story.
cool.
Yeah. So that was the end. So then I was working backwards. I was working to get you to that one page.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I still have the original one page, and it's not there's almost no difference from the story version and the original one page.
Yeah.
That's pretty much untouched.
Yeah.
So then Maury's story is the first story that's like totally fresh and new. So then I had to do research for it. I remember I had sat down and I was Googling the most haunted places on Earth.
Yeah.
Because I guess a ghost story was just something that had appealed to me. So I was like, well, I'll do a ghost story. I'll look at some haunted places. I'll look at some cursed places, et cetera, et cetera. And I had come up on the suicide forest in Japan. And this was before Logan Paul did all that stupid stuff.
Yeah,
or
that
whichever
stupid
Paul,
shit in the forest, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, this is cool because, I mean, Japanese people know about this, but I don't think, like, it's not a big thing in, like, public consciousness as far as Americans. I had never heard of it until I found it out. So I was like, oh, this might be cool, and this is probably something that people haven't touched on. I think that was, like, 2016 maybe, because I've been writing a book for a long time, but not like seriously, you know.
Right.
So I was like, oh, okay, this is semi-original, blah blah blah. I'm really excited for it. So start writing the story. I start looking up different cultural like omens in Japan, like things that are bad luck and things that are different. Actually, when you look at The Sky's Red, the story, it's littered with bad omens for Japanese people.
Really?
Like, almost every detail in there is like a bad omen. It's like the worst thing possible. So, the details are all in there.
Yeah.
And then I want to say maybe I got like halfway through that story, and I was on YouTube, and I saw a preview for a movie. I think it's called The Forest, but I can't remember. And the premise was like really similar to what I was thinking of. And it was some American girl that goes into a forest and she's like looking for someone or something. The Japanese, the suicide forest, I think it's called a Aokigahara. So she goes in the forest and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this is the worst thing possible. Because it's pretty similar, and it's like the same year that I'm writing this. And I guess it's human nature. Somebody did I'm not the first person to sit down and Google haunted places on Earth.
Right.
You know? So they, I guess, did the same thing, and they had made a movie about it. And I almost scrapped that entire story because I was like, it took the wind out of my sails, and I was done. And I guess, like, I was like, well, I'll keep trying. And I was kind of on the fence, and I worked on it a little bit. And the movie came out, and I just didn't watch the movie. I refused to watch the movie. I thought it was like, I didn't want to watch it. It was making me feel bad.
Yeah. And
then the story was kind of on pause, et cetera, et cetera. I was thinking of ideas, but I wasn't ready to write it, and I was kind of in a slump. And then I actually did watch the movie. The movie was horrible. The movie was so bad. That movie sucks. And I think in seeing that it sucked and like nobody paid any attention to it, it gave me hope because I was like, well, I'll do it better than this. So then I finished it, and it was actually the easiest. I think that's the scariest of the 5 to me.
Is Maury's?
Yeah.
Hers is really scary.
To me, that's the scariest of the 5.
Yeah.
There was parts of that I was like, I was writing it at night, and I was like, I sleep or something. But I think it came out really well. I really like Maury's character. She's awesome. That did get tweaked a little. But I mean, they all got tweaked, but I really like the way it came out. But yeah, when I was looking at the geography and all the different mythology and stuff like that, that was something that was I had sat down and I had Googled it and I was thinking about it and I was looking at omens and I was doing all this research. And the World War II thing that was actually really fun. It took me a while to kind of arrive on it though, because geography and all these different factors.
If you're gonna write about World War II, I mean, there's a lot of people whose whole livelihood is like trying to examine it from different ways and things like that. So if your book ever were or when it does blow up and falls under that type of scrutiny, you'd want it to be able to hold up.
Yeah.
I feel that.
That's funny. I never really thought of it like that. For me, I was like, I want this to, because history is interesting. Like, I remember seeing that thing from Hellboy and then being like, I didn't know that. I really want to like learn more about it now.
Yeah.
And now, I think now that I'm older, I am concerned with validity. LeBron's voice, but before, no, that video kills me. Before, I don't think that was as big a concern as making something that's cool and that piques somebody's interest and that you could learn from. Because I learned so much from like media, which I think is pretty good. I'm interested in general information anyway, but I do learn a lot from media where I'm Googling stuff, and I like to learn a little bit of something when I check out something that's fiction. So I wanted to replicate that feeling, give that feeling to people who are reading my art.
Okay, and then I'm going to get to my last question before we field some from the audience. Wavy, you are your name is Govinda, and
Yes.
you're the very first black Hindu I've ever met in my life.
Really?
Yeah, I've never met a black Hindu before I met you. I wasn't even sure that I didn't even think to imagine that there were black Hindus out there. And in writing this story, with that cross section of you being black and Hindu, do you see like how did that affect what you wrote? How do you think it affected what you wrote?
It's kind of the catalyst for everything. I think the way that we think about death, and the way that we think about the different things that inhabit the world and the body and all these different concepts where we're not this body, right? We're the spirit soul. It's within the body. It's not like a light, it's a person. You have all these different senses and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the spirit soul is compared to the driver of a car, right? The body is the car. But just because you drive your car, you're not a BMW, you're not a Prius, you're not this, that, and you're a person, right?
Yeah.
The car is the body that you're in.
Yeah.
So then there's that. And then there's the way that life works after death. So all these different things are temporary situations. If you end up as a ghost, you could end up as a ghost, but that's a temporary situation. You're not a ghost forever. You're not in heaven forever. You're not in hell forever. Those are all, I want to say, institutions of the world that we're in. And then God is in a totally different, that's your original place. That's a different place compared to all this other stuff. So like heaven and hell are like prison and vacation, but until you escape it all, then, you're chilling down here and you're trying to figure it out. So the way that death works and the way that a lot of these things are explained are like groundwork for the book.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the ways that the approach that all the teachings take is what inspired me. And like without that, it's inextricable from the work that I've done. And I mean, there's a lot of references directly to the the teachings of the Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, all these different things. And it's really important. It's first of all, it's super cool. Just to like read and think about is super cool. Even if you're just looking at it from like an academic point of view or whatever, it's extremely interesting. But like this is my life. This is the thing that I hold so dear. So for me, it's giving somebody. It's almost like the thing where I was saying with World War II, where it's like I'm presenting something that I really, really, really find so interesting, and I'm giving the reader the opportunity to get interested in something and look it up and do their own research and have a cool, either a cool tidbit of information or change their lives or whatever it is. I think it's interesting that there's a come away in that sense. There's a takeaway rather, that the person can go on and check things out on their own. I think that's the point of any good art, where you can take something away and then look something up on your own and have fun, and or not have fun, or however you want to interact with it. But yeah, Eastern philosophy, especially when it's talking about death, when it's talking about life after death, what you could be, what you could turn into, how things work, karma, the kind of light and dark of things that people consider. There's a lot of information out there, and it's all really interesting. The way things look and the way things behave and all that other stuff, it's endlessly creative. It's limitless.
It's funny that you say that, because there's definitely evidence of the way you believe in life after death in the story with Maury, without me going in depth at all or spoiling anything. But with especially in that last page we were talking about in part 2, I remember, I think Lamar posted it on his timeline, a screenshot of the specific moment I'm thinking about, in where there's a form of catharsis that reflects exactly what you were saying about the way that you all believe in death, and believe that the body is a car and the spirit's driving, and that kind of implies things that the spirit would be capable of should the body oh man, that trash can just scared me. Should the body fade away or depreciate?
Right.
Well, of course, I had more questions prepared, but I kind of want to open this up to our audience here. Do you all have any questions for my good man Govinda?
Yes.
If you have any questions, feel free to drop them. Oh, there we go, right there. And Church dropped one in there for you.
Certain songs affect how you crafted your character. Okay, so Church asked. Oh, it's on the screen. I'm gonna still read it out loud.
Please do.
He said, "I talked about it briefly with you before, Wavy, but in more depth, how important is music to your writing, and how did certain songs affect how you crafted your characters, if at all?" It's a really good question. I had 3 playlists that I kind of cycled through for the most part when I was writing. One is a little bit more ambient, and it's a little creepy, and it's a little bit... I'm going to get to Archie's question next. It's a little bit like... It's almost like walking through a mist at night. It's like a really misty night. It's kind of cool, but not cold. And it's not necessarily scary. It's just eerie. It's a little bit, keeps you on the edge.
Is that the Haunting Hour playlist?
Yes, that's the Haunting Hour playlist. Actually, I mean, I could probably just link these playlists in the discussion.
Yeah, feel free. Put them in the chat.
So that's a good one. That one is good for when I'm not trying to focus on the lyrics. Because a lot of it is just kind of like chill. And then there's another playlist that is not as good as far as like like the Haunting Hour playlist. I really put time into sequencing and the mood and the what am I trying to say, transitions. And then this book playlist is like gobbledygook. Some of it is actually in the Haunting Hour playlist. A lot of it is just stuff that kind of sounds a little darker. It has more energy. That's more like an action scene or a scene where it's supposed to get your blood pumping. But a lot of the common themes of the music, if it's not just the music, a lot of the lyrics are like lyrics about perseverance and kind of making your way through an adverse experience. And I feel like that's something that I want the reader to pick up on. So, like, for the second one, for example, there's a Mobb Deep song called Where Your Heart At.
Mm-hmm.
And the beat of that is really cool because it's a it's a Fear sample.
Mm-hmm.
And Fear, that song is about a girl who, her matador, like her lover, but he's also kind of like a warrior. She wants him to come back safe, but she's kind of afraid that he's never going to come back, et cetera, et cetera. And then Mobb Deep flipped it, where it's kind of like, it's almost like the warrior side. That's how I feel about it. It feels like her side is from the lover's side, and then their side is from the warrior side. And the strings are really like these sweeping strings, and then it's kind of like kitchen hi-hats and stuff. And not to sound too nerdy, but it just kind of sounds like, you're right before you go to do something tough and you're like standing on a cliff and there's like wind blowing and you're looking out as the sun sets and it's starting to become night. So that's a really cool song. That's the song that I had on repeat a lot. Another Sade song, actually, Cherish the Day. That's one that I was playing a lot recently.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that part where she's like, "Won't catch me running."
Yeah.
And the beat it's like contemplative, and it's just, I like songs with the theme of like you're not gonna run and you're persevering and stuff like that. But I think because I like TV and I like movies so much, then music. I mean, I like music also. Music is a huge part of my life, but in writing, I feel like, okay, this is the soundtrack, and this is this, and this is that. And that's why I actually made character playlists. I made a YouTube for the channel, for my writing, and I would make character playlists. And I put them in the secret file, and I picked songs that the person would like to listen to, but also songs that kind of describe them, and songs that were like theme songs. And I want to also make a playlist for the book, but I feel like it would take too many pieces of those playlists. But that's something that I want to get into. It's almost like I'm scoring my own movie as I'm putting it on the page. So I feel like music is really important in setting the tone, how things transition and how things are going and telling that story. And for me, that's what the music is a lot. And I mean, it cuts out distraction when you're listening to music, but it helps me focus in on the emotions. Yeah. I like those playlists too. We have two more that we haven't dropped because the characters, there's certain bios that we can't even drop right now because technically they're spoilers. So
That's crazy.
Stockpiled them and saved them and everything. We're working on it.
Wow, how would you even roll that out if they're spoilers?
We can't until the second one comes out.
Oh, until the second book comes out. Okay, I thought they were spoilers.
So no. With each release, I want to put out 3 character bios. They're each gonna have the art. They're gonna have all the information, just like this one. They're gonna have a playlist, and there's gonna be something like this secret file. I did an interview with Ben, the artist, and I asked him some questions, and we shot the breeze a little bit. The next one, I'm probably gonna do something else cool. I don't know. I'm figure it out. But I think that's cool because people are getting that for free, and they can kind of interact with the lore in a way that's not necessarily just through the book. You're getting likes and dislikes and character stats and stuff, and it's also pretty good for me because then I have it down so that I can look back at it and look back at it.
Okay.
I can I can reference the information. But yeah, I hope I answered that question in my own rambling way.
Now, if I wanted to see these secret files, where could I find them?
So the secret file is on my website. I will link it in the chat, actually. The secret file is really cool. Spent a lot of time on it. We're on volume 1.
Beautiful.
It has all the concept art and sort of character backstory for it. Thank you, Church. So you have all the information, likes, dislikes, height, weight. Like it's a real secret file. And you get a playlist. You get sort of behind the scenes. So I talk about the creation of the characters and how they evolved from then into now. And some of the characters changed a lot from when I first imagined them. And there's some bonus stuff that I'm probably forgetting to mention. It's really cool. Yeah, we grew up on like the little Marvel data books and DC data books. And,
talk to them.
When you go to manga, they have manga files.
You dating yourself again? I just
I
want you to
am.
know.
I've accepted it, man.
I didn't know that you were in college in 2013. You my age.
Well, I was in college when I was 17.
Still, you my age.
This is true. No, that's not.
All right. Did you want to answer Archie's question? Please read it out loud before you do.
Yeah, because Archie said, "How can I get like you?" Which is insane because, matter of fact, let me link it. Archie is a phenomenal writer. Archie is an amazing person, first of all. He's a phenomenal writer.
Talk to him.
He has a couple of short stories out already that you could read for free in this on his website, which I just put in the now he's saying this cap. Shut up.
All right, yeah, okay.
And the funny thing is, Archie did put the battery in my back for a lot of some of the publishing, because it's funny, between Archie and between UE, I saw that you guys had your own websites, and like it's one of those situations where something becomes concrete once other people can look at it and judge it. So I was thinking to myself, oh, I really need to make my website. I really need to do this. I really need to do that to solidify this thing. Because I finished the book, and then there was time in between where my mom was editing it, and then we were doing things to prepare for release, and then it was done, and we were trying to figure things out. But until something is concrete, then it's like, it might as well not exist. I'm telling people, oh, it's coming out soon. Nobody has a date. And they're just kind of like, well, I guess. And your flame fizzles out, you know? So between you two, I was like, okay, now I really got to make a website. And you guys' website is cool. So then I was trying to make my own website. And I think it's okay. It's got some tweaks that I'm going to make. It's going to get cooler. But so far, it's a little cool. And I remember, this is another thing, Ben will be on your ass. So Ben had this thing called Circles. We have a group of friends, And a lot of the friends are artists, and Ben's like, "Oh, you got to draw your circle for the day. Ben's you got to do something every day." So then eventually, any kind of daily practice, we start calling it circles. And I remember there's a book that Stephen King wrote on writing, and he was saying that if you're a full time author, then I can't remember. I think he said I can't remember if he said 1,000 or 2,000 words. I think it's 1,000 words rather. He was saying you should write 1,000 words a day, which is roughly 5 pages. Um, but if you have a job, you're most likely not writing 1,000 words a day.
Right.
And for me, I just don't think that's not something that I can do. I have a lot of stuff going on. So I remember Archie had tweeted, he was like, I'm doing 250 words a day. And I was thinking about it, I was like, bet. So I started writing and I started keeping a word count. And the word count helps. Yeah, 1,000 words a day is crazy, Archie, especially if you're working full time. Full time, you at a certain point, I feel like then you're just writing like a college student trying to meet a word count instead of trying to, you know what I mean, get somewhere in the story. I feel like that starts to affect your output because you're like, oh, I have to do this every day, so I have to meet this quota. So with me, I was like 250 words should be doable. At that point, I didn't know that much about it. I was like, I just have to do something every day. And like, I was looking at all this motivational stuff, and all my motivational stuff, I don't look at like Tim Robbins. I remember there was this, I get motivated by these really random things. I saw this video of Lil Wayne, and he was like, what's the mother of talent? He was like, repetition. He was saying all this stuff, and he was like, repetition, blah, 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 blah. You want money, repetition, blah, 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 blah. Like, the answer to every question that he was giving was repetition. And I was like, he's right. And then I was thinking, like, I got inspired by this quote by this composer. I can't remember the guy's name now, but it was on Instagram. And he was saying that he had talked to this other composer, and the composer was talking about writer's block. And he was saying that you just don't get writer's block. He was like, well, what sense does that make? If I feel like I have writer's block, how are you going to say you just don't get writer's block? Right. He's like, what if it's not good? And he was like, you just write it down anyway. Huh. He's like, you have to do something. You have to just write it down, because you can always come back to it and fix it or make it better. But if you don't put anything down, then the idea dies.
Oh, wow. I like that.
So that really, yeah. So the thing is, and like the way that I've kind of expanded upon that in my mind is all these things are like your children. You know, these are like living, breathing things. They're these Frankensteins of people that you knew and experiences that you've been through, and all this different stuff come together into a fiction. And it's alive. And it's kind of why I feel like we're so self-conscious to share things, or you might not be, but it's like when you have a kid, you don't want anyone to say your kid is ugly, or even if your kid is kind of ugly, then you know you love them, or you appreciate this about them or that about them. And it's because it's taking a life. It's taking on a life. So the longer that you keep it inside, the more it's just it's like a caged bird. So then you put it on the page, and then you can develop it. You can nurse it to health. You can give it, it'll grow and it'll change and it'll adapt to whatever you want it to be. But you got to put it down to the page. You got to commit to giving it that life.
Well,
so all that to say,
I'm not going to lie to you. You just motivated the hell out of me.
I hope so.
Man, that was wonderful. Wow.
So those two things got me motivated. Doing it every day because it's like a muscle. If you continue, you got to work it out every day and find what works for you. 250 words is my baseline. On a normal day, I average like 300 or 350. And that's like a day where I'm working. On the weekends, I'll average like, if I'm really busy, then I'll hit the 250. But if I have time, then I'll hit 500, 600 easy. That's nothing. But I think giving yourself a baseline is good because then you'll never feel like you're not progressing, right? You'll feel like, okay, I did something for it. And you don't have to beat yourself up. Like I get really, really like laser focused where it's like, I gotta do this. I gotta do this. But if you do something that's attainable, then you won't feel like you're letting yourself down. And then you can just do more if you feel like you want to do more. At one point, 500 was my daily quota, and I was hitting 500.
Yeah.
But then, like, when I had to promote things and I was doing all this, when I was building the website, all this stuff started happening. And it was writing in a lot of cases, like doing the secret files. There was stuff that I already written, and then there was stuff that I was actively writing or doing. There's articles on my website that I had written, but I wasn't counting that in the 250 or 500 or whatever it was. I was counting that as a separate thing. So then it just got to be a little much. So 250 is a solid number for me where I can hit that on the busiest day. Like I can sit in bed, bang out 250 words, and then if I'm satisfied or whatever. And go past it if I want. But when things started getting a little busier, 500 wasn't realistic. So you got to be realistic with yourself. But if every day is the most important thing.
All right, chat. Do we have any more questions for my boy Govinda?
Circles, man.
Circles.
Round and round.
I think that's it for the chat. Then I'm just gonna ask you one more question for me. How was self-publication for you? Like, how did that go?
Oh, jeez.
Oh, jeez. I feel like it's something that we don't talk about enough, and that's how people end up. How do I end up getting stuck in corners like this? But that's how people end up getting screwed over by publication companies and things like that.
Yikes.
You know what I'm saying? So, what was that process like for you?
Thankfully, my mom had already did it, so she had some good insight on the matter, right? A lot of it is pick your poison, because beyond the I'm going to talk about like the sort of, I don't know, I want to say the business aspect of it first. When you self-publish, you got to decide. I did it through KDP, which is Amazon. And Amazon is the biggest digital bookseller in the world. There's no disputing that. So it's pretty good. You're on the biggest digital bookseller. You know, people buy books. Amazon. Everyone has Amazon. You know, yada yada yada. It should be fine.
Right.
The other thing is there's a lot of books on Amazon, so you got to make your book stand out and all that. I put it on Kindle Unlimited. So Kindle Unlimited means that you have a digital exclusivity deal with them. So they got you in the
they got you in the 360.
You're a Sony exclusive, yeah. So when you're selling your digital book, your ebook, you can only sell that through Amazon. You can sell the physical book in other ways, but you gotta make sure that you're not violating any terms, because if you violate your term with Amazon, that's a problem. But the upside to it is Kindle Unlimited. A lot of people that read books have Kindle Unlimited anyway, and they can read your book for free. When they read your book, you do make some money, it pushes your book because people are clicking on it. They don't even have to read the whole thing. They just have to take it out. I think that's what they call it. It's like a library type of deal. And it's kind of like an easy way because people, when they don't spend money on it, you think of PS Plus, it's the same deal. People are like, oh, I played this game on Xbox on Game Pass and it wasn't that great, but I didn't pay anything, so who cares?
Who cares, right?
So, yeah, people are more likely to give you a chance if you're on Kindle Unlimited. They have it, they didn't pay for it, and they can just continue on. But being on Kindle Unlimited does make certain things difficult. There's a thing called Ingram Spark. Ingram Spark is good for if you're trying to sell in independent bookstores. I am not exactly sure if you could be on Ingram Spark and sell through that and be on Amazon. I think you can, but I'm not exactly sure. So I'm not going to do it because the obvious the consequences are not good. So, you could take your book off of Kindle Unlimited whenever you want. And then you don't have to worry about violating any terms. But for now, I'm trying to get the accessibility thing out there. So the independent publishing, it has its own things. You would think, why not just go through Ingram Spark? Well, Ingram Spark has its own fees associated with it. So the way that I was looking at it in my particular situation, I would make less money being on Ingram Spark because they have a couple fees associated with it and associated with getting the store their money, their cut of the bread, versus me figuring it out on my end and selling just through Amazon.
Right.
You can walk into an independent bookstore. You might even walk into a regular bookstore. I haven't really tried that yet. I've been hitting pretty much any bookstore in any vicinity near me asking for consignment, and they'll sell on consignment. Basically, with consignment, you have a certain number of books that they'll take. Usually it's like 3. They take the books, you fill out a form, and then the agreement is if the book comes off the shelf, somebody purchases it. If not even if somebody purchases it, if the book is gone from the shelf, then you're getting paid for it. So it's a 60-40 split. Nice. In pretty much all my experiences. If the book is gone, you get paid. If not, at the end of a certain period, usually it's like a month or 3 months, then they give you your copies back.
Oh, wow, that's good.
Yeah, so, the good thing is people who go into independent bookstores are serious about reading. They're not just, going in there to chill. They're trying to get something.
Yeah.
And then if you make relationships with the people in the bookstore, then they'll push your book because they believe in the quality and they believe in you. So it's a decent way to get your word of mouth out. Yeah. And on consignment, you print your author copies, you bring them 3 and, see how it works out. The only issue is that's a bit of effort rather than if they were just ordering your book off Amazon, Ingram Spark. Right. But at the same token, you would still have to convince the person to take your book anyway. So it's swings and roundabouts. It's 6 in one, half a dozen in the other.
Right.
So that's kind of where I'm at with it. The other thing is, let's say you had an actual publisher, you weren't self-publishing, then they're handling all the marketing for you. So now I gotta market myself. I actually have been slacking. I need to put out Instagram Reels. I need to put out TikTok stuff. Then you're in content creator territory.
Yeah.
So now it's like, okay, I gotta think of ideas. Okay, I gotta do this. I gotta do that. And you're either investing money or it's all DIY. So some of this stuff, I'm the one speaking on it, and I don't necessarily want to be the one speaking on it, but here I am. I'm doing it. You know what I mean? I'm doing it. I went to bookstores. I have flyers. I have copies of books that I'm showing people. I went to a book festival in Brooklyn like 2 weeks ago. I went to Comic-Con, and you're putting yourself out there. You're trying to show people, and people will walk right by you. People won't say anything to you. People will be like, "No, I'm not interested." And you gotta
hold
thug
that.
it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta hold that.
You gotta hold
so,
that. I'm proud of you
it's
for
a
doing
lot
all
of
that,
like.
though.
I appreciate it, man. I really do. I really, really do. It's all word of mouth. It's all word of mouth.
Well,
I mean, Amazon has this algorithm.
Right.
So then you're learning the algorithm, and there's different things you could put in. Like the first 30 days is when they push your book the most, if I'm not mistaken. No, it might be 90 days. I can't remember. But that's the crucial thing where they're doing the most of your stuff for free. They'll put your stuff to the top of the list, or they'll move your book up, or whatever. And because they want to make money, they want people to buy your book,
right?
Because there's printing costs, and then there's another thing. Actually, this is something else on the business side of it. Amazon split. So there's a printing cost, and then when you scrape off the printing cost off your price, there's split. So with Amazon, I think it's 70-30, but if you do 70-30, then it's not in every region. So yeah. But to be fair, the 70-30 is like basically any region you could imagine that you were going to sell a book anyway. It's the vast majority of places.
Right.
They handle it. I think the other one the other one must be 60-40, but then that's any place that Amazon has the reach. So that's like the entire world.
Right.
But 70-30 isn't bad considering the places that you're leaving off are like, as an American person in New York, I'm probably not even reaching that area anyway.
Right.
You know?
On your own, right.
On my own, right. It would have to be like the biggest thing in the world. And then at that point, then it's a little different. So yeah, there's that consideration. And then there's the technical side of it where me and my mom had spent like 2 hours doing the fonts so that it fit inside the margins and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Like, there's stuff you got to do. You think just because you got the cover that you're finished? No. Now you have to design the rest of the book. So when you look at the book, the spine we had to design. We picked the font for that. We did all that stuff. The cover I did with Ben, right? Ben, that was easy peasy. He did the art. He helped me. We picked the fonts and all that stuff together. We tailor-made it. Boom. The spine, me and my mom did that. The backing of it, where it had the description and all this other stuff.
Yeah. We
did that. There's a lot that goes into it. Picking font size, we picked the color of the pages, we picked the margins, and then like all this technical stuff. Then you upload the file to Amazon.
Right.
Amazon has to approve it, and this is actually funny because this is how my book dropped, and I didn't even realize it dropped. I had given everyone a release date of the 26th. I had Ben do art for it, so it was promo.
Yeah.
It was supposed to drop the 26th. We submitted it a couple of days early. I want to say we submitted it the 20th night.
Yeah.
Because you could do promo for digital, but we didn't really realize you couldn't do promo for the physicals. I mean, pre-order.
Yeah.
Which I don't think that really makes sense, but it is what it is, I guess. So we had submitted it just in case it took time.
Right.
And I guess the idea was if it takes 3 days, then we can just delist it and wait and then relist it.
Right.
So we had sent it for submission, and then we had set the digital for pre-order. Everything was it was good. It was gravy. This is after a couple times where we had to change the file type, and we had to do this, and we had to do that. Like, it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
I go to bed. The next day I wake up, and I'm promoting a pre-order. So I'm like, yo, guys, it's out on pre-order. It's this, it's that, yada, yada, yada. And then you send me a screenshot that says the book will be delivered on Saturday. So now I'm confused because Saturday is not the day it's supposed to drop. It's supposed to drop on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm bugging out. I'm like, and then I realized that you had bought the physical.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just you. It was like mad people. So now at this point, I'm like, my book dropped, and I ain't even realizing. So now, I don't know if you noticed, but I had to change some of the Instagram captions to say that the physical was out. I had to do this. I had to do that. Then I was this was before we had author copies, so I didn't know what the book looked like. I had the preview from Amazon, but I was like, yo, if this book is off the pages or something, people are gonna be so mad because that's what we were scared of. And on the preview, it said that. But I don't trust the computer because, technical difficulties are the name of the game.
Right.
So now I'm going to order proof copies, and I had to create a new Amazon account for the author stuff. But I'm not paying for Prime on the new Amazon account.
Right, of course.
The old Amazon account, obviously. The old Amazon account has all the points and stuff. So, that's why the proof copies aren't coming for dumb long. So people are going to have their book before I get the proof copy. And then I was going to order I think we did order an actual copy. And that came. So basically, I didn't know my book dropped. And like a multitude of people had the book before I had it, which was hilarious. And then on top of that, we got the author proof copies. And they had this big ass, ugly, not for resale band across the cover.
Oh no!
It's disgusting. So these are useless. I mean, they showed that the book looked fine, but it was. So that was a funny launch, and it's stuff like that it's a nice story, but it's also a learning experience.
Oh.
Yeah.
Get up there. Well, first of all, it was so funny when I ordered the book first, and I was like, oh well, it looks like I'm gonna get mine early, and then I saw you basically go into a frenzy on the internet, trying to change stuff back or change stuff over. That was honestly some of the funniest stuff, because I mean it wasn't funny, but it was because you were not happy. But you were ecstatic.
It's very funny. Yeah.
But you were ecstatic. Well, I think I am gonna wrap the interview there. We hit the 2-hour mark, Wavy. We really we really hit that with this one. I'm not even gonna lie to you. You wrote an excellent book. I was telling you before we started the stream that I've been carrying this thing around with me everywhere and telling everybody I can about it. Because it really is an excellent book. You did a wonderful job on it. I can't wait to finish it. I'm going to continue recommending it to anybody with ears that'll listen. Again, Hecatomb with a Vampire. It is for sale now. I have it pinned in the chat section if you want to order it for yourself. The Kindle version is $5, I think. Is that what it was, Wavy?
Yeah, the Kindle's $5, and then the paperback is $15.
Get you a paperback, man. It's definitely worth holding this thick one, this very thick one, in your hands, man. I know that you were agonizing over it, Wavy, but it came out great. It came out great. I'm not going to end the stream yet. I think I might play some hold down R1 to use a flare. That's good to know. I think I might play a little bit more of this. I don't know if you saw it just now, Wavy, but they really did have me in hell with that one part because I was running out of ammo. Yeah, no, it's thick, bro. You see that?
Yeah,
that's thick.
I just wanted to say real quick.
Yeah.
I appreciate my brother E for everything that he's doing here, giving me the platform to speak, and he came up with all these questions. He put me up here. He's been supporting the book from day one and everything. I really appreciate it. But also to anybody that has even considered reading a word that I've written or picked up the book, anything, I really, really, really appreciate you. I really listening, like hearing me speak, anything. I appreciate you guys from the bottom of my heart. I can't thank you anymore. I'm very grateful.
Honestly, thank you for coming on and doing this for me, bro. Like, I really appreciate it. Like I said, from the time I started reading the book, I knew I wanted to interview you about it. And you being so gracious to accept it and come on and be, honestly, you were enthusiastic about it, man. That was wonderful, man. I really do appreciate you for that.
That's love. That's love. I'm gonna head out. I need to eat.
Yeah, bro. Go ahead and eat. You already heard me eat before we got on.
I appreciate you so much for having me on here, man.
Hey, no, I appreciate you so much for coming, bro.
And I'm so excited. Stay tuned. Check out the book if you can. It's free on Kindle Unlimited. Not a cent. Just all you gotta do is pay attention. The second one is pretty much done at this point. It's coming soon. It's coming sooner than later. And then I have a lot of stuff in the store in the bag for you. So, check me out. And bless up. It's all love, man.
Absolutely, brother. Again, thank you for coming by, and thank you for allowing me to interview you, man.
Thank you. Amazing interview. I think we all got to give it up to you.
Hey, stop. You're going to make me blush.
All right, yeah.
All right.
One.
Good night, brother.
You should turn yourself off. They was acting so fool. Me and Lil Rick, we was getting our